Bitcoin breaking all-time high. I was like getting ready to do a video. I was rushing to try and do the video as it was happening and I missed it, but it happened. Bitcoin broke all-time high. Potential resistance right now, something I want to discuss. However, the bull's in position to absolutely get some separation from this area that it's in as I do this video. And that's kind of what I want to dissect in this video. I want to do some actual short-term price action analysis on Bitcoin, what to anticipate, what to look for, what a dip could look like if it's actually going to see resistance right now. And then on the altcoin markets, I want to talk about why the move that Bitcoin is doing right now is an incredibly powerful signal for altcoins in a very similar way that we saw in November 2024. So please hit the subscribe, hit the like on the way in, and let's just jump into this analysis. I want to just start with this. Bulls in full control in terms of the Bitcoin bulls. And I posted this before I went to bed. Bitcoin bulls appear to have taken full control, all-time high looking imminent. And this is what our signal in the intelligence system, Crypto Capital Venture intelligence system, was saying. And I want to point something to your attention right off the bat. If we open up this chart, bulls in control for Bitcoin. Notice as we scroll and look at altcoins, we're just kind of in bull's edge. They have the edge or they're neutral. This is very telling, not in a bad way, but in a bullish way for altcoins. And I'm going to get to that in the second half of this video. But if you want this tool, by the way, everybody, we have this tool. It's a very short-term, momentum-driven, data-driven tool. Get signed up in our intelligence system. We do have a sale going on right now, 40% off, and we have some epic risk models. We have our exit planner. We just activated risk mode in. There is so many tools back there, and our members, I think, are positioning themselves very well for the bull cycle. So with that being said, that is just an indication of short-term momentum. The bulls are in control, and the thing is, when we're looking at this move right now, testing all-time high, another way to look at that indicator, the bulls being in full control for Bitcoin, is we go back to last time Bitcoin broke this all-time high, which was from March 2024, right? And just check this out. All of this consolidation, as you remember, and this move right here is what I'm focused on, because that's the daily candle where Bitcoin really just kind of broke all-time high, and we're looking at a date of around November 6, 2024. As I go through this analysis for Bitcoin, keep this in mind as we're about to pivot and look at the altcoin charts, because I think things become pretty compelling in terms of the setup for altcoins right now. But November 6, 2024, big move for Bitcoin, above all-time high, very similar to what's happening right now. Even just structurally, it just is obviously a little bit different, maybe a little bit less consolidation, but high fear event. And if we go look at now, the momentum oscillator on Bitcoin, check this out. That November 6th move was bringing Bitcoin into this overbought environment. And I want to point something out to you. This was the beginning of Bitcoin's move much higher, right? So Bitcoin in that daily candle was like 74. This move ultimately led Bitcoin to breaking 100,000. So we're talking like a $30,000 move for Bitcoin. This is where Bitcoin was on price charts, and this is where it was from a momentum oscillator. Well, look where we are right now. We're a little higher on the momentum oscillator, but you can see how there's absolute upside in store for Bitcoin, especially because if you look at this chart, we've just been consolidating very nicely. We're getting a swing high, RSI consolidates. We're getting a swing high, RSI consolidates. And this is very illustrated on the price chart, right? Look at this sideways action. This is very healthy for Bitcoin. And we're getting a very similar look of this consolidation when you go to something like just the zoomed out Bitcoin chart. When you go to something like our risk model, for instance, on the Bitcoin charts, I think I just talked about this in yesterday's video. What's happening in terms of the zoomed out consolidation from a macro bull cycle perspective is something like we've never seen. So even to see that type of thing on a short-term chart like this daily chart, and it's really not that short-term, but you see these consolidations, and now we zoom in and we see the very short-term consolidations on the daily. This is healthy for Bitcoin. This is healthy for Bitcoin higher highs and higher lows. So in this context, higher highs and higher lows would mean Bitcoin gets a separation from all-time high. So that momentum is there for Bitcoin. I just want to say that. And we can watch and see how this current daily candle kind of closes for Bitcoin right now. We want to see separation actually start beginning. But if there's resistance. I want to talk about that because I posted this idea, I think this morning, the potential inverse head and shoulders, right? You all know I'm always cautious anyway, no matter what's going on. And I think when we do start getting moves like this, it's always a good idea just to anticipate healthy consolidations even. So what I'd be watching for is potential resistance here. Maybe this daily candle just stalls out right now. Maybe it goes to 110,000. People are like, this is it, game on, and then it stalls out. Either way, we could have a resistance area here, and we have a very nice structural setup for a potential inverse head and shoulder. So if we fail here, Bitcoin starts coming back down. Maybe as we get this 50 crossing above the 200, we need to see Bitcoin retest those areas in between the 20 and those areas, right? So Bitcoin's coming back down into the 90s. And maybe people are probably like, man, bear market, that was it, triple top for Bitcoin, game over. But what's happening is just another healthy consolidation for Bitcoin for an epic setup. And in this case, we could have an inverse head and shoulders setup for Bitcoin playing out in this chart. So let's monitor. I think this is all we can do. Nobody knows how this is going to play out. We want to see the separation. We've already identified the bulls have that momentum control. It is 100% in play that we get a very similar move to what happened here. And if you take a fractal, by the way, and we just kind of plot this over here, and I'm not saying it would play out exactly the same, but you can just see Bitcoin could just be starting a ridiculous move. Now, keep in mind on this daily chart, we have things like the M2 global money supply over here signaling that move, is in play as well. So this would not be surprising if Bitcoin absolutely just keeps going up. However, something to monitor is the consolidation on this chart and the potential setup for an inverse head and shoulders. It's just something I'm speculating about and I want to kind of monitor. If we go over to altcoins though, this is the total crypto market cap chart excluding Bitcoin. Here's what we have going on. I already, from a shorter term perspective, we went to the bull bear arena and basically looked at, okay, the bulls are in control of Bitcoin. What's up with altcoins? Bull's edge for Ethereum, XRP still neutral. And what that means is if you click this, it's basically pulling in momentum data. So the MACD is neutral, stochastic is neutral, price momentum bullish. Now, Ethereum, MACD is neutral. If Ethereum's MACD turns bullish, we're going to start seeing the bulls kind of going from bull's edge, bulls have the upper hand, to then bulls are actually in full control. And that move for just altcoins in general could be signaling itself on the altcoin charts. And we can bring into play the Bitcoin data that we just dissected. Everything that we just talked about in terms of Bitcoin momentum back here and the beginning of Bitcoin breaking all-time high back here can be applied right here to altcoins. And it's probably even more powerful on an altcoin chart. So, and what's interesting is this plays into the sentiment as well. If you notice, altcoins, when it was actually, so Bitcoin was making its move to all-time high basically on this day, November 6th. Look where altcoins are. They're all the way down here. Altcoin market cap, all-time high is still all the way over here. So this is nothing new, right? Altcoins kind of lagging behind Bitcoin and people just being like, man, Bitcoin's moving, why aren't altcoins? Well, that was happening right here. And altcoins eventually did have a nice breakout. It was not obviously the beginning of altcoin bull market or altcoin season, but now we have a similar move. Bitcoin's breaking all-time high again, and altcoins are still, they're not. And I'm sure there's tons of people that right now are like, what is going on with altcoins? And it's just kind of like, it's just this lagging effect that altcoins have behind Bitcoin. I'm still quite confident that Bitcoin dominance is eventually going to fall. And even in this move back here, my point is Bitcoin started making its move on November 6th, but altcoins really started making a powerful move. And we saw Bitcoin dominance falling through this move. I'm very confident that something like that is going to play out again. And it might actually even be like very soon, because if you look at the momentum back on November 6th, here's where altcoin market was. It had all of this upside in play. And what I think is very healthy on this chart is this altcoin chart on the RSI has already kind of gotten overbought and cooled down to this higher low area. So we've really just been cooling down. We have a ton of upside, very similar to the upside that was in play starting in November 6th. And so with that being said, on the altcoin chart, not to say this is exactly how it would look or how it would repeat, but right now, altcoin market cap is higher than it was in November 6th, first off. And if we do have a similar power burst move, we might see finally this altcoin market cap chart, guess what? Break all-time high. And if it's going to break all-time high, that doesn't mean that's the top, that's the bull market high, but this could be the very beginning of altcoin bull market. Because notice, when altcoins last cycle, here's all-time high from 2 cycles ago, but when altcoins last cycle broke all-time high, it's not like this swing high was the end of altcoin bull market. It had just broken it, consolidated, but it continued into the bull market. We could be at the very beginning of a similar move. So when we have Bitcoin like this making moves, I think it's very bullish for altcoins. I know a lot of people are just like, man, altcoins just can't do it. They can't break out. But I continue just to zoom out on all of markets and all of crypto and everything that's happening in the space right now. And I really do think that the crypto and even the altcoin market is setting up for its own bull market. So these are my thoughts on altcoins. It's something to monitor, keep an eye on. Very similar charts to the breakout that started the beginning of November, happening right now. Let's see what can happen on even the very, very short term. We want to see this 200-day moving average being broken. Even when you get into just each unique scenario for altcoins, something like Ethereum, testing key resistance area, right? The 200-day confluent with this multi-year lower trend line of this triangle. We have to monitor these things. So I'll probably do a video later on just on altcoins to kind of dig through some multiple different altcoin charts. But these are my thoughts today so far. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, everybody. I appreciate you cruising through. Hit the subscribe. Hit that like if you enjoyed this content and turn notifications on. I will see you in the next video. God bless.